I actually was thinking about this today, and so I wrote down my thoughts today on this. But the word love, right? Everybody uses it in everyday life. I have said it about so many different things today. Like, for example, I love chocolate cake. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I love a cup of tea. Coffee. Coke or Pepsi? No, I'm joking. Yes. All those in favour. No, so I've used it in so many different things today, and I was actually thinking, I work in a school, and so a lot of my sort of job is to try and get people to want to learn, and not many people do. So I have to pretend quite a lot of the time that I'm like loving what I'm doing, and I do love my job, but every now and again I'm like, okay, I just need to get into this. So I'm like, I love something, and they're like, oh, and it sets off a conversation, and then the conversation's flowing. But I realized how desensitized we've actually come to the word love. We can say, I love chocolate cake and I love my mother, and it just means the same thing. How the heck do we get to that? Do you know what I mean? I can literally use the words, I love chocolate cake and I love my mum in the same sentence, and you guys would be like, nice. Do you know what I mean? Where instead, if I said, oh, I love my mother, you guys are not going to go, oh my gosh, that's so cute. Oh my God, I got a little tear in my eye. You're not going to it. You're going to be like, oh, that's nice. Cool. Cheers, Chloe. Thanks for telling us that information. I do love my mum, for the record. My mum's an angel. Anyway, but it has been flung from pillar to post. It's one of those things that we use every single day. We don't even think about it. And honestly, I've probably said it loads tonight. And honestly, it's become a bit of a boring word. And so that begs the question, well, what is love? Do you know the song, What is Love? Baby, don't hurt me. Somebody even wrote a song about it. We just don't know. We ain't got a clue, right? Love has become completely tangled up and kind of forgotten about in the white pages of the dictionary, because we all think we know what it means, and so we don't really tend to look for its meaning because we just think we know what it means. But that's not true. Because honestly, what is love? Is it just a chemical reaction in our brain? Is love a choice? Is love a feeling? Is it an action? Is it something that we kind of learn? Is it a learned action? Is it something that we kind of see other people doing and then we catch on to it? Honestly, it's huge. There's actually scientific experiments that have gone into trying to find out what love actually is. But do you know, I'm a Christian. Shocker. You all know where you are, right? So I'm a Christian. And so whenever I look for the meaning of things, I tend to go to the Bible, because the Bible does actually have a lot of answers to things. You'd be surprised. And so I was looking at this today, and I actually looked up just a handful of verses that have the word love in it. And so I was kind of looking through it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I realized something. That God in the Bible never, or anyone who was writing it in the time, never actually just flings about the word love. So it's not like a kind of, I love chocolate cake, or I love whatever. It's not like a fling about words. So I wanted to give you a couple of examples. So there's one verse, I have loved you with an everlasting love. So there's everlasting love. His love endures forever. The Lord is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness. So we know and rely on the love God has for us, because God is love, and see what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God. Now, it struck me that these things are not light things. They're not just like, oh, love you, like kiss, kiss. It's nothing like that. This is a deep sense of care and compassion for the person, for the subject of these sentences. It's not just I kind of love you when you're all right. I mean, you're kind of a rubbish person most of the time, but when you're all right, I love you. It's not a kind of, okay, you've done some really good things today. You helped that person. You said something nice to that person. You made that person feel good. I'm going to love you now. No, this love is an all-encompassing love. In other words, it's unconditional. And that kind of love is something that isn't really known to us in this society. Everything has strings attached. Everything. And so there was an experiment that Craig a couple of months ago showed, where it was like people were just giving out free money as an experiment, and they were like, what's the catch? We're constantly conditioned to think that everything, including the love that we want, has strings attached to it, and that we must have to do something in order to earn it. And isn't that a really sad thing, that we are so out of touch of what unconditional love is that we don't actually know what it is anymore? But you know what, guys, right? There is actually a Bible verse that actually talks about the meaning of love. And it's this. It says, by this we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us. So let me read that again. By this we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us. So we see here that love is sacrificial, it's unconditional. And you know what, guys? The greatest display of love that has ever been shown was the cross. Because even while he was hanging on the cross in excruciating pain, after, by the way, it wasn't just the cross, after being whipped, mocked, beaten, spat on, to the point where he wasn't even recognizable, okay, and then had a crown of thorns in his head and was made to carry the cross up the hill to where he was going to die, and then he was hung on the cross. The cross was like the finale kind of thing, after all of the horrific stuff. Even in those moments, he didn't open his mouth, but to shout things back at him, but instead, he looked down at the people who were in front of him. He's hanging on the cross, and the people who were in front of him, who were shouting at him, saying, oh, who do you think you are? You could get down off that cross if you wanted to. Come on, if you think you're hard enough, come down off the cross, prove who you are. He hung there, and he said, forgive them. He still interceded for them in that moment when they were horrible. They were flipping horrible. Do you know what, right? And I say this reverently. If I was in that position, I'd be like, do you know what? All right, then I'll show you who I'm made of. I'm going to come down, I'm going to show you. And they all would have been silenced. Everybody in front of him would have been silenced. They would have been jaws on the floor, like, oh my gosh, this guy really is who he says he is. So why on earth did Jesus stay on the cross if he could have done it? Guys, it's because he loved you. It was the love that he had for you on the cross that kept him there, not the nails. I'm telling you now. Honestly, that is the greatest act of love that has ever been on this earth, is the fact that he could have got down off that cross, but he didn't. He didn't. He could have easily, but he didn't, because he loved you. And so if you're here tonight and you feel like the most unloved thing, you feel like you're the one in the friendship group, or you're the one in your work kind of colleague thing, that you just think, nobody appreciates me, nobody loves me, nobody wants me, I'm just a blob on the earth. That's not true. Because honestly, Christ died for you, and it does not matter what anybody says, you are in that category of Christ loving you and dying for you. And so don't let anyone ever tell you that you are unworthy of love, because you are. And he loves you so much. And I say loves because it's a present thing. It's not like 2,000 years ago he lived and he died and that was it. He's now dead in the ground and he's gone. No, he is ever present and he's here, honestly, guys. And so we look at the cross and we think, do you know what? That was the greatest act of love. Because while I was in the worst place imaginable, while I was in a horrible place, while I was doing all these awful things and thinking all these awful things and wanting that person dead and wanting to run over that person because they cut me up on the road, or wanting to say some really horrible things, he still went to the cross for you. Now, one of my favorite songs is a song called Indescribable by Chris Tomlin. And one of the lyrics at the end, it says, you see the depths of my heart and you love me the same. Guys, he knows you inside and out. He really does. And the love that he has for you is infallible. It's something that nobody can ever take away from you. And so I encourage you tonight to embrace that. If you're walking in here tonight and you just feel empty and you feel alone, you might even feel used and vulnerable, and you just feel like you're the loneliest person, even in a crowded room like this, there is hope. There is hope, and it's the best place for you to be. I want to leave you with this thought, that he could have got down from the cross, guys. He could have. It was an option. But instead, he knew what had to be done. And so he stayed there. For 6 hours, he stayed there. Whilst having everything heaped on him, insults, and he was being goaded by these people. They were even, there was people at the bottom saying, oh, when he dies, I'll have that piece of clothing, and I'll have that piece of clothing, and I'll sell that for a bit, while he's hanging on the cross, guys. Like, this isn't just a normal death. This isn't somebody dying of old age or natural causes. This is somebody dying in the most brutal way possible. Why wouldn't you want to get off the cross and show them who you really are? But he didn't. And that's why it's the greatest act of love, because there was a choice for him to turn away and he didn't. He died for you. That's a massive act of love. You will never find a more true or more pure love than the love that Christ has for you. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. There is not one person in this room today who he won't love. It does not matter what you've done. It does not matter where you've been. It does not matter what you've been a part of or what you've seen. We actually had a guy in church yesterday who is coming in a few weeks. I'm not going to say too much, but he did a testimony about how he used to be a drug dealer and he would like hold people hostage and stuff. Like, I know that we are not all like that, right? And we can kind of come across and I was like, oh, I'm not that bad. Like, I'm a nice person. You know, I help people and I'm nice. And, you know, I sit by the people who sit on their own and stuff like that. Guys, just being good isn't enough, right? We need Jesus in our lives to help us out. And so tonight, I encourage you to just sit with that and just know that somebody loved you so much and wanted to be with you in relationship so much that he died for you and remained on the cross even while people were heaping insults on him and were mocking him and had just spent the last however long whipping him and mocking him and kicking him and spitting him and doing all these horrible things to him. And he did that for us. Like, I will never get over that. I don't know about you guys, but I never will. Don't walk away from the one that is so in love with you that he died for you. Don't walk away from him.